In Part 1, we saw Nelson Mandela defend his controversial allies before a shocked American audience. He declared that Arafat, Gaddafi, and Castro were comrades in struggle, supporting the ANC not just with words, but with concrete resources. The bomb had been dropped. Now came the confrontation. American Jewish leaders were in the audience. They had traveled to Geneva specifically to express their concerns to Mandela about his support for the PLO. And now it was time to confront him publicly. This is the story of how Mandela navigated one of the most sensitive issues in international politics, staying true to his principles while trying not to alienate crucial supporters. Welcome back to the most controversial night of Mandela's American tour. Henry Sigmund, a prominent Jewish leader, stood up slowly. The tension was palpable. Before I asked my question, Sigmund said, "Permit me to say that when I had the pleasure and honor of meeting with Mr. Mandela in Geneva, we told him that the commitment of Jewish organizations to the struggle against apartheid is absolutely unconditional. It does not depend on whether we are happy or unhappy with his answers." Respectful applause echoed through the auditorium. But having said that, Sigmund continued, "I would be dishonest if I did not express profound disappointment with the previous answer. It suggests a certain degree of amorality. It suggests that what these people do in their own countries is totally irrelevant in terms of human rights, as long as they support the ANC's cause." The silence was deafening. Everyone waited for Mandela's response. He began calmly, but with growing firmness. "We are a liberation movement fully involved in a struggle to emancipate our people from one of the worst racial tyrannies the world has seen. We have no time to investigate the internal affairs of other countries. It is unreasonable for anyone to think this is our role." Then Mandela brilliantly turned the tables. "Someone asked me to express an opinion on the racial differences in the United States. I categorically refused to get involved in that." Applause interrupted his speech. "Why does Mr. Sigmund accept my refusal to get involved in the internal affairs of the United States, but at the same time wants me to get involved in the internal affairs of Libya and Cuba? I refuse to do that." The logic was impeccable. Consistency was the key. Mandela then directly addressed the PLO question. He explained that the ANC identified with the Palestine Liberation Organization because, like themselves, they were fighting for the right to self-determination. But he went further, making a crucial statement that many did not expect. Support for Yasser Arafat in his struggle does not mean that the ANC has ever doubted the right of Israel to exist as a state legally. We have stood quite openly and firmly for the right of that state to exist within secure borders. The audience grew quiet, processing this nuance. But of course, Mandela continued, "We carefully define what we mean by secure borders. We do not believe that Israel has the right to retain the territories conquered from the Arab world, such as the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. We don't agree with that. Those territories should be returned to the Arab people." It was a balanced position that recognized Israel's right to exist while supporting Palestinian self-determination. It was not the blind support his critics feared. Mandela then revealed a fascinating detail. "In our organization, we have Jews. In fact, Gaddafi did not allow us to open offices in Libya precisely because we had the courage to tell him that we work with Jews in our organization. He did not allow us to open an office until February of this year, when he had to accept us as we are." This revelation was powerful. The ANC maintained its non-racial principles even when dealing with Gaddafi, risking losing his support. "We are not prepared to be swayed by anyone," Mandela declared. "We have an independent policy which we assert, no matter with whom we discuss." The discussion then turned to conflicts within South Africa itself. Chief Mengisuthu Buthelezi, leader of the Zulu political organization in Inkatha, appeared in a recorded video. Buthelezi spoke directly to Mandela through the screen. "My dear, you know I'm not responsible for us not getting together. It's other people who have said, in so many words, that they don't want you and me to meet. But during all these years, you've been incarcerated. You know we've been in touch." He continued, reminding him that he had refused to negotiate with white leaders for decades without Mandela's presence. Nothing prevents you, even in the United States, from picking up a phone and calling me. Mandela's response was diplomatic but firm. I do not think it correct to wash our dirty linen in a foreign country, even though it is our own people. But then he went straight to the point. One thing I want to dispel with all the force at my command. There is no difference whatsoever between myself and my organization on the attitude towards Nkata and you personally. If I have not seen you, it is because of decisions we have carefully discussed amongst ourselves and of which I am part. He reiterated his desire for the ANC and Nkata to sit down and resolve their problems, ending the violence in NATO. But the question was no longer simple. The government has taken advantage of the differences between our organization and yours, Mandela said. They are using those differences to try to eliminate the ANC and those they consider a threat to white supremacy. That now is our problem. Mandela asked a devastating question. I said to President De Klerk, you have a strong, efficient, and well-equipped army and police force. Can you tell me why the government has failed to suppress violence, in which almost 4,000 blacks have been killed? De Klerk never managed to give a satisfactory answer. Mandela believed he knew why. You have not suppressed this violence deliberately because you believe that by using these differences between these two organizations, you can crush your enemy number one, the ANC. It was a grave accusation of government complicity in the violence between blacks. Ted Koppel returned to pressing Mandela about the political implications of his controversial statements. He warned that Mandela should not be misled by the hometown crowd, applauding him enthusiastically. These people already believed in him. But America was large and diverse, with many people who did not view him with such admiration. You are not being very political, Koppel suggested. Your statements about Arafat, Gaddafi, and Castro could alienate the Jewish community and Cuban Americans, groups with the power to pressure Congress to lift sanctions. Mandela's response was forceful. One of the problems we face in the world today are people who do not examine problems objectively, but from the point of view of their own interests. It would be a grave mistake to consider our attitude towards Arafat based on the interests of the Jewish community. He acknowledged sympathizing with Jewish persecution throughout history and the community's positive influence against racism in South Africa. Jewish lawyers defended political prisoners when few others would. He himself was trained as a lawyer by a Jewish firm when few firms accepted blacks. But that does not mean that the enemies of Israel should be our enemies. We refuse to take that position. You can call it being political or a moral question. But any person who changes their principles depending on whom they are dealing with is not a man who can lead a nation. The applause was thunderous. When Koppel suggested that Mandela had not listened to his argument, Mandela retorted firmly. You have not commented that I am going to offend someone by refusing to get involved in the internal affairs of the United States. Why are you so keen that I should get involved in the internal affairs of Cuba and Libya? I expect you to be consistent. For a moment, Koppel admitted being momentarily paralyzed by the response. Senator David Boren then offered a different perspective. He predicted Mandela would be warmly received in Congress and asked if there were positive signals America could send to both Mandela and De Klerk, helping them against extremists on both sides. Mandela praised Boren as a man concerned with justice beyond his own country. But he reiterated his warning. Any action explicitly aimed at helping De Klerk would be a serious mistake. The white right wing already accused De Klerk of being a puppet of the United States and Britain. Western support would only confirm that narrative and destroy him politically. Only the ANC can help De Klerk, and we're doing our very best, Mandela said. Throughout 2 extraordinary hours, Nelson Mandela demonstrated remarkable consistency in his principles while showing tactical flexibility in his diplomacy. He refused to compromise the ANC's alliances based on American political considerations, but worked diligently to explain his positions to concerned groups. He maintained unwavering support for continued sanctions while acknowledging progress in negotiations. He called for unity among South African liberation forces while identifying government complicity in ongoing violence. He articulated a pragmatic economic vision without ideological labels, but clearly committed to addressing structural inequality. This town hall meeting revealed both Mandela's strengths as an international leader and the challenges he would face navigating complex geopolitical relationships. His moral clarity about the evils of apartheid was unquestionable, as was his commitment to non-racialism within the liberation movement. The tension between principled consistency and political pragmatism would continue throughout his American tour and beyond. But that night at the City College of New